Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I want to side my remarks first with comments from Mr. Keating. It's always good to know the background of witnesses when you are asking witnesses questions to see if there is any motive. With that said, I'd like to address the issues that I talked about in my opening statement, the broader issue, not just the airplane that was shot down criminally. Yes, hold those people accountable. But going back to what Dr. Aaron has said about the motives, the intent, rather, the intent of Putin and the Russians, long-term intent. A statement was made that the Russians don't want to put troops in Ukraine because it's expensive. They sure didn't have any trouble putting troops in Georgia, and they're still there. Mr. Brzezinski, what do you see as the longer-term goal of Putin? I, too, believe that it is nationalistic. The Russians like this invasion of Ukraine. What is it, 40, 50% of them support the invasion or support the Russian movement? Putin backs off a little, maybe negotiates with the West. Does that not look like weakness to the Russian people? I don't know. I'm asking your opinion on long-term goal. I talked to Moldavian members of parliament. They think they're next. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. They think they're next. And of course, Poland's always got the problem with the Russians. Are these fears of Latvia and some of these other countries that they've expressed to members of Congress, are they just, it's not real fears, or is there some substance to Putin's long-term goal, which I think is to make the Russian empire bigger? Would you weigh in on that, please?
Yes, sir, Chairman Poe. First, I'd point out that the Russians are not just in Georgia, they are in Ukraine. There are 20,000 to 30,000 Russian troops occupying Crimea. Russian special forces are leading and fighting in eastern Ukraine. Russian political operatives are the head of these separatist republics in Russia. So Russia is in Ukraine, militarily and illegitimately in political ways. What is Russia's goal? What is President Putin's goal, I should say? President Putin's goal is essentially a revanchist vision. He wants to reestablish Russian greatness, and he defines that greatness
sort of like the Tsar.
Sort of like the Tsar, like Tsar Peter.
Tsar Vladimir, but Putin.
His vision is to recreate Russian influence over the sphere of the former Soviet Union, including its, the Warsaw Pact, for that matter. And what's particularly dangerous about that vision is he's reintroducing into Europe the principle of ethnic sovereignty, that Russia has a unilateral right to go in and redraw borders simply because there are ethnic Russians living across those borders. That's incredibly dangerous. That principle—
That's his so-called legal justification for invading his neighbors. Yep. Would you say that's right?
That's correct.
He's not really going to promote humanitarian goals in eastern Ukraine. He's going over there to take back Ukraine and make it part of Russia. Is that oversimplification?
I think that's pretty accurate. I would put his priorities first, in terms of specifically with Ukraine, is to subordinate Ukraine.
All right, long term. I have just a few minutes left. Long term, what do you see?
Subordinate Ukraine under Russian influence. If he can't do that, keep Ukraine unstable, destabilized so it can't go to the West, and at a minimum carve out parts of Ukraine that are strategically important to him, including eastern Ukraine and southern Ukraine.
Mr. Taylor, weigh in on the same question. Long term, what do you see Putin's goals are?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think he is that strategic a thinker.
Okay.
I think he's an opportunist. He saw an opportunity to go into Crimea, and he did. He could do it, and he did. He did it easily, quietly, illegally, totally illegally. I don't think it's a legal rationale that he's trying to establish about protecting Russians. That's not legal. Indeed, that led to World War I, when the Serbians tried to indicate.
But I'm not saying he's right.
No, I say, but it was not.
He's trying to justify it.
Right.
He's trying to justify it to the world.
Trying to justify, but it is not a legal justification. It may be he may be trying to make that case. So, in answer to your question, Mr. Chairman, I don't know what his long-term goals are. I'm not sure he does. I think he's taking advantage of weakness. He's taking advantage of the fact that so far the West has not confronted him. And he's going to move until we confront him.
Dr. Aaron, long-term goals, I appreciate your 3 bullet points, but what do you see down the road?
Well, even a longer term, wider context. A year ago, I published an article in Foreign Affairs called The Putin Doctrine. And I think it's very simple. It's to recover geostrategic, economic, political, and cultural assets lost in the fall of the Soviet Union. In other words, he does not want to recreate the Soviet Union. It's silly, it's costly, it's risky, but he wants to recreate or take control of the assets inside the country. He already did, over politics, over the key aspects of the economy, oil and gas, over culture. And in the broader sense, I think in the territory of the former Soviet Union, is to establish Russia as being in control, not just hegemonic power, but in control of the former Soviet state. That does not involve occupation of every former Soviet state. It involves, as Ian pointed out, it involves keeping those states' foreign policies, and sometimes even domestic policies, bound to approval or disapproval from Moscow.
Let me interrupt there since I'm out of time.
I'm done. Thank you.
So he would use a bigger approach than just militarily. He could use economic approach, like he is using in Eastern Europe and part of Western Europe with the monopoly of Gazprom, for example, because there's no competition. He can shut off the gas in Ukraine, which he has done, and I was there when he did it in the winter, and it was cold and it was dark. So that opportunity, United States, Western powers who think that this aggression should be stopped, maybe we should have some responses economically, as well as helping out Ukrainians militarily with helping them solve their own security crisis. Would you agree with that or not?
You know, in connection with economic measures, and also apparently there are going to be some serious sanctions rolled out, a word of caution. Precisely because, as I said in my testimony, the war in Ukraine is a domestic Russian political issue. It has become one. It's at the center of this regime. It's responsible for a great deal of its legitimacy and popularity. Don't expect sanctions to work quickly. In fact, in the short term, I think they're going to cause Putin doubling down, if I know the man correctly, doubling down in Ukraine, rallying around the flag, his popularity even going higher. Long term, medium term, probably they will force him to make choices. But don't oversell economic sanctions for now.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.